Sure, without him there'd be no Dragon Ball, but other than that, Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now, before you type in the comments saying that we're wrong, hear us out with this one. We are not saying at all that Bardock is not important to the story, nor that his character is bad. It isn't. He is good. What we are getting at in today's video is going to be a little more nuanced than that. Maybe a little bit more jaded in the form of realistic things, but we'll focus on the most recent events as well. So sit back and listen to what we have to say in regards to the father of Goku. Haverock and I can assure you that there will be no dad jokes in this one, and you know, with me, that's saying something. Over the years, we have kept being taken aback in regards to the particular hype that surrounds Bardock. The franchise nor the fandom can't get enough of him, despite his lack of power and status with the modern day roster of characters, relatively. And this is despite him not being an original Toriyama character. Usually the audience isn't as welcoming to filler characters, which is what the father of Goku is technically when we first met him. However, his status is now a little more muddy as Toriyama took him in and has actually kept bringing him in, with the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie of course, as well as a few panels in the Z manga. He does fully admit that he likes the character a lot, and really did wish that he came up with him first. So, for the purposes of today's video, we will try to decipher the phenomena of his popularity, as well as his possible future impact on the series as we go into the 2020s, and heading very, very fast, uncomfortably fast, towards the 40th anniversary of Dragon Ball. It's only 3 years away, mind. Now, many of you may know that, as we just said, Bardock didn't originate in the manga. He originally debuted in his own special of Dragon Ball Z, Bardock, the father of Goku, on October the 17th, 1990. This single movie was enough to blow wide open the scope of Dragon Ball Z, with bringing the true origins of Goku's Saiyan heritage into the light, in the form of his father, who was nothing like him, despite sharing the same hair, which has since been stated to be a common low-class hairdo amongst the elites. It was derided as some sort of commonality. Toriyama did indeed adapt him fairly quickly into the story, and we actually saw Bardock in the manga on January the 5th, 1991 in the manga, chapter 307. So yeah, this wasn't something that happened years later. Toriyama added Bardock to the manga just 2 months after the special aired. Wow, I really liked him. The hype was real, and the bars of solid-state Scouter could be heard in the corridors of Toei Animation, I bet. This debut was a pretty big deal, not just for the fans, but for the overall product. It made Bardock the first anime-only character to then make their way into the manga, as Toriyama seemingly liked the idea as much as the fandom did. I mean, aside from the weird plot about seeing the future, said special was a real treat for the fandom. It was darker, grittier, more grown up, in a good way, and has provided a lot of backstory for what had been happening behind the scenes of the early Z era, decades before Dragon Ball. It does seem a little random for a Saiyan to be able to see the future, but I do dig it a lot though. It gives Saiyans something they didn't really have much of: perspective, realizing the consequences of their actions. It isn't just about battles and moving on to the next mission and having a good time. There are things and ramifications that will come about for your people if you don't stop this chicanery and prepare for it. It came as a real shock to Bardock and proved that Saiyans at the time just were not compatible for knowing their own destiny. It drove our protagonist mad. Broly had Kakarot and Bardock had Frieza! So because of that, the character of Bardock has become pretty popular with the fans. As has Broly. Huh. A one-word catchphrase of a particularly popular character. That's a good formula. Now, I can imagine in the 90s when Bardock was brand new, he was pretty respected amongst the fandom, but now he is especially revered in the modern era. Everybody loves Bardock. Even the unfortunately misguided episode of Bardock special from 2011 didn't do any damage to the character's reputation. All it did was make the fans go, "That was a really weird show, let's forget it ever existed. Bardock's still awesome." Then they move on. That rarely happens in this fandom. He even reappeared in Dragon Ball Minus and Dragon Ball Super Broly, and most likely had a cameo in chapter 68 of the Super manga of the Granola the Survivor arc part, which is, at the time of writing this script, the most recent bit of Dragon Ball media. Now, a lot of you out there were really skeptical, thinking, that's not Bardock, but we can assure you it is indeed Bardock, what with the iconic scar on the left cheek. I think with the framing of this, there are very clear indications that both Toriyama and Toyotaro knew what they were doing. They wanted you to know this was Bardock, and at the very least, it's a nice little bit of fan service since Bardock was around at the time of actual Granola's plight. He is a very often feature of our weekly roundtable live streams, as many of you would love to see him in particular what-if scenarios that reunite him with his family, even though we remain persistent with the fact that he's not a family man or the nicest being in the universe. If he did go with Goku to Earth, he'd just leave him there, make sure he was okay, and then go off and do something else. But people still don't care. It seems like Bardock has some kind of influence over the fandom. He is seen as some kind of being who can do no wrong, and is as just as much of a hero and badass as his son is, despite only having a power level of 10,000. I don't get it. So why is he so popular with the audiences? And is he really that special? Or is this all just marketing bump? Well, we do have quite a few reasons as to why we think he might be special, so let's go. First, he is indeed one of the very few serious characters in the Dragon Ball show, probably even more serious than Tenshinhan. His story seems to appeal to people who associate the series with the less whimsical and more intense parts of Dragon Ball, especially the people who joined with Z, which would explain why there was at least some dissatisfaction with Bardock's Minus/Broly portrayal, as he could have been seen to have appeared as a softer interpretation of the original character. The thought does have legs to it, as Trunks is equally revered for just the same reasons: tragic backstory, serious personality, and badass action sequences, as well as actually people not liking the blue-haired Trunks because he appears as a softer iteration than the Z version. But let's get back to Bardock though. Making his son more like Superman, which is something that originally seemed to be just more of a submersive move, with how unpleasant Saiyans originally appeared to be, it's quite the big contrast actually. Goku represents what Saiyans can become, whereas Bardock represents where they have come from. Secondly, well, he puts Goku's story itself in perspective, showing, in theory, what could have been, what are the roots of our protagonist, and gives the conflict with Frieza more of a personal touch. It's not just your generic avenging plot where there's no direct connection. Goku is there to finish what his father started, without even knowing it. Sure, we knew that the evil emperor had already destroyed Kakarot's entire race, but when we know that his dad was more personally involved, well, that kind of ups the stakes. It changes things and makes us more invested in Frieza as well, which is probably why he's just as lauded amongst the fandom as Bardock is, often seen as one of the most beloved villains of the whole franchise, and why his constant reappearances are treated with more warmth instead of derision like it would happen maybe with other characters. And lastly, but perhaps the most important reason, design-wise, he is another Goku clone, and everybody loves a Goku clone, apparently. I mean, that's what we're told by the people who make the show. Lately, have decided to feel a little frisky, and chose to catch a little fragment of Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Yes, he was that bored. It was only a fragment, mind, don't get any ideas. This was the part where Fu was using his evil aura on Vegeta and Goku. Scary. In this segment, both characters suddenly came under Fu's influence, but only Vegeta was the one to lash out against his ally, Goku, in this scene. And after they both got affected, they started to attack Fu anyway, despite supposedly being mind-controlled. And this got Hav thinking, how many times since the original Uzaru incident in the first Dragon Ball series have we seen the original Goku properly lose control and do something bad against his will? We cannot recall a single incident in the main timeline. And no, we don't count Goku Black, because the show and manga do make it pretty clear and state pretty quickly that this character looks like Goku, but isn't Goku. Also, we don't count that one time when Goku went berserk in Super Dragon Ball Heroes for 10 seconds against Kumba. You know, that whole thing about, if you touch Kumba, you too go berserk, which never happened again after it happening to Goku, because Trunks touches him many times. If we missed something else and you guys can recall an occurrence that we didn't actually mention, Do let us know in the comments. And even if the likes of Turles and Bardock are separate characters, they also share the look with our protagonist. And that is actually pretty clever because with characters like this, plus Goku Black, you can give your fandom a version of Kakarot for any situation, doing questionable things, without tarnishing the original visage. He is still the hero of the show. With having this many Goku clones, you can basically just be going, "Hey everybody, I'm Son Goku, fancy a slice!" There's enough for everybody. No matter what you do, Goku's still the hero of the show. It just happens that there is a guy who has the same dude doing bad things is all. Like we said, the cut is a common one in the lower classes of Saiyans. That's why a true evil or grey area Goku, which pretty much does sum up Bardock as well, will never be a hypnotized version of Goku, or a version where an outside force has taken over the mind of our main character. You can mind control Vegeta all you like, or even his sons or anyone else, but Goku, oh no. He has to rely on the clone characters for that to happen, including his dad. And the reason why Bardock is such a big thing in something like Xenoverse 2 is actually quite simple. As someone who is in that grey area, he can be an anti-hero, and people love anti-heroes, right? That's why Vegeta is so beloved. Bardock was angry towards Frieza for controlling the Saiyans, and later plotting to destroy them, but it isn't like he was really forced to take part in Frieza's conquest. He went along with it for a long time. Think about it. If they weren't controlled by the Space Emperor and were free to do what they wanted, would they really have been more peaceful? Of course not. He and his colleagues would pretty much just proudly continue what they were doing, acquiring more planets for the Saiyans this time. Just doing the same thing they'd been under Frieza. Remember, Frieza mostly profited on the Saiyans' MO until they became too much trouble. He just facilitated them. Saiyans aren't good guys, Frieza just gave them a leg up. But at the same time, Bardock wouldn't be unnecessarily cruel, as we explain in our granola script, and he cared about his relationship with Guinea more than the average Saiyan would, and to some extent for at least one of his sons, or in a way, about his legacy. This is a character who you can show both destroying cities and saving children in the same outing, and it would make sense. Out of all the Goku clone characters out there, Bardock is the most flexible. And don't get us wrong, we do not consider Bardock to just be another Goku clone. He is more special than that. In fact, neither are Turles or Goku Black. But from a marketing point of view, these three characters have very distinct functions. You can't have Goku lose his mind or go evil outright. That is just not right. It's not part of the rulebook. You just wheel out Turles, Bardock, or Goku Black to do the evil intents instead of the original Goku. It's not bad that you guys love Bardock, he can be a pretty interesting character, but we feel there's more than just a storyline reason as to why Bardock is being wheeled out to the forefront so many times, way more often than he should. The whole episode of Bardock thing is a testament to that. Which other character who is not a part of the main cast could hope for having a second OVA in their honour? Not even Trunks got that. Bardock is being very much placed on a huge pedestal. And yeah, it felt like a ridiculous cash grab, but people were happy to see Super Saiyan Bardock, and the games and the merch clearly adapted to that very quickly. It didn't matter that the plot itself was stupid. You got to see Bardock become the legendary Super Saiyan and Deccan ancestor of Frieza and the Snoz animated. That alone justified the price of admission in some people's eyes. Xenoverse 2 is even more ridiculous with Bardock, probably why the game is still being added to 5 years after it came out, which is almost unheard of in the Dragon Ball sphere. And I'm sure that no one that actually is familiar with the character didn't guess the identity of the mysterious masked Saiyan within 2 seconds when you first played the game. Because it couldn't have been Goku, you do not mind control Goku. But Bardock on the other hand? He was masked enough to be a marketing gimmick, but deep down, you knew it was going to be Bardock. The rest of the attire gave it away, but it pulled you in anyway. And that is one of the reasons why all the minds behind the marketing stunts will never want to really unite father and son either, and only will tease us with certain elements of them maybe being in the same environment at some point, only indirectly. Xenoverse 2 is never going to do that, and they've pretty much done everything. And we're actually really convinced that there might be some rules within the Dragon Room that forbid such a meeting. They could easily do this in the game, but they don't. Burst Limit does get close, with Bardock seeing where his son goes with Super Saiyan 2, but that was merely Bardock having another vision, not seeing Goku in the flesh. Granted, you might get some brief cutesy scenes like in Dragon Ball Fusions where Goku sees Bardock but doesn't know who he is, but other than that, nothing doing. Now, okay, we don't want to come across as Bardock haters, we're really not. We really hope that what we've seen in the Granola arc, that one singular panel, is going to be more than just a cameo, and that this will actually become a proper plot point later on. Because though we are aware of how Bardock is getting overused in the side media, we don't really have that much concrete info about him in terms of the main story to back him up. We want him to be more fleshed out. And the Sins of the Father storyline in terms of Goku? That actually might be really interesting. Goku now having to clear up Bardock's mess directly. If it's just a cameo, well, at least it's a subtle implication, so yeah, we can find bright points for both outcomes. Bardock is an interesting addition to the Dragon Ball universe. Yes, interesting. Even Toriyama has seen his potential, despite the character not being his original work. But he isn't the biggest or most special character in the show. And now it seems that the big heads behind Dragon Ball at Shueisha, Toei, and even Bandai are aware that Bardock does attract attention easily. He is quite good, we will give him that. But just do keep in mind that sometimes his importance is useful in making money rather than making a compelling character. But what do you folks think? Is Bardock more special than we give him credit for? What kind of development do you want to see him acquire in the future? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!